Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. It is time to get your brollies out as the wet season is here. Meteorologist Gary Benjamin, he joins us to discuss the outlook for the wet and hurricane season 2023. Welcome, Mr. Benjamin. I know people normally say that the 1st of June, the wet season is here, but what are some of the factors that go into declaring the start of the wet season, please?
Okay, the 1st of June really is the start of the hurricane season. The 1st of June to November the 30th. The wet season normally, is from the 1st of June to December the 31st. But we would declare the rainy season as having started when one of the regular rainy season features, such as the ITCZ or tropical wave, passed across Trinidad and Tobago and produced any measurable amount of rainfall. And that happened last Friday, the 26th. And so we declared the rainy season as having started for Trinidad and Tobago.
Right, and with that, the first answer, the man make my boy look like Baji, fold up, fine, mash up my dolly house. But break down for me, what is the the Intertropical Convergence Zone? Thank you. Let's read and spell first.
Okay, the Intertropical Convergence Zone are where the equatorial winds, the winds around the equator, meet together. That is the winds coming from the southeast and the winds coming from the northeast, in the northern hemisphere generally from the northeast, and the southern hemisphere from the southeast. Now that ITCZ or that zone would be shifting according to the seasons and following the apparent migration of the sun. Now when these two wind fields come together, they converge, and therefore convergence would cause a building up, and therefore you have weather happening along that line of convergence. And this is what we call the Intertropical Convergence Zone.
Thank you so much. And in that first set of precipitation that leads to declaring the wet season open, do you use that as any type of gauge or measure to say, okay, what can this year look like, or what can this season look like for the year? What is the outlook from where you sit for the wet season for 2023?
Okay, we don't really use that as a gauge. We could hardly use that as a gauge because that really, the first initial period of rainfall could be any amount, and it really speaks to weather. So when we're talking about the wet season or the hurricane season, to gauge it, we use climatological factors. And one of the major factors that we have going on is the El Nino La Nina, or the El Nino Southern Oscillation. Also, we're looking at what is called the Atlantic Meridional Mode, and that AMM would give us an indicator of how the ITCZ would behave and where it might situate itself throughout the season. So we really use climatological factors. And as I said, the major one at this time is the El Nino as part of the El Nino Southern Oscillation, and the Atlantic Meridional Mode. Meridional meaning north to south. So we're looking at the differences in the temperatures at the southern Atlantic and in the northern Atlantic around the tropical or subtropical waters. And right now, the tropical and subtropical waters in the north is warmer, and therefore we have a positive AMM from the south, the colder south, to the warmer north.
But you said something just now, and I want to follow up on it, please, Mr. Benjamin, because many people will look out the window and then declare themselves an expert. But make that distinction, please, between making a pronouncement based on the weather versus looking at the climate, and what are some of those differences? Thank you.
Okay, well, the weather is really the day-to-day effects of what is being produced as far as the atmospheric conditions are concerned. And the climate is really the average weather over a longer period of time. Now, sometimes we might get some heavy rainfall in our dry season. Of course, we are an equatorial climate, and whether it's dry season or rainy season, we could get rainy weather. And even in the rainy season, we'll get some hot sunshine. So that is the weather itself. what is happening from day to day, so that there may be some heavy rainfall periods in the transition times coming to the rainy season, and people may mistake that for the actual beginning of the rainy season. But once again, it is the features we are looking at, such as ITCZ, tropical waves, and God forbid the cyclones that may pass close to us.
And so, yes, we're talking about rainfall a little bit. If we were to break this season into two halves, what are some of the outlooks that we may be seeing, possibly overall, and then first half versus second half? Thank you.
Okay, so when we look at the climatology, the overall rainy season seems to be panning out, or we expect it to be normal, so to speak. That is, the amount of rainfall we expect to collect within the season would be around between 75% to 125% of the long-term climatological normal. This year, we are looking at the first half of the rainy season as being around normal to just above normal. And we may have some pockets of above normal rainfall in the western parts of Trinidad and also of Tobago. And as the season progresses, we are looking at the El Nino being firmly entrenched in the next month or so, and therefore it could tamp down a little bit of the developments that might take place. So in the second half of the rainy season, we're looking at normal to a little drier than normal, and we're seeing pockets of dryness that may be taking place in certain areas of Trinidad and Tobago. But when I say dryness, it doesn't mean that we would not have rainfall, but the dryness refers to less than normal rainfall as far as the long-term average is concerned. And that are just pockets. So the end all of it is that the entire rainy season looks to be just around normal. In the first half, areas of just below normal, and in the second half, areas just normal to a little bit above normal.
And you spoke about dryness. I also want to ask about temperature. I think we'll do that on the other side of the conversation. But listening to these nuances and the level of specificity that you're able to add to the conversation, or insight that you're able to give us, Mr. Benjamin, please state it, because sometimes we do it at the end. But why should individuals look to the Met Service, the Met Office, to get credible factual information, and as opposed to saying, well, this site says this, or this site says that? Why come to the Met Service to get that information?
Well, in Trinidad and Tobago, the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service is the official body, the official organization for producing, analyzing, and producing weather information for Trinidad and Tobago. So that, and we are working under the WMO standards. We have to keep world meteorological standards, and we have to have standardized ways of doing things throughout the world. So that under the WMO, we are under the aegis of the WMO, we are sanctioned by WMO, and we have the authority to produce weather information and any type of information to do with the atmosphere as far as Trinidad and Tobago is concerned. And therefore, because we are standardized like that, we could share our information to the rest of the world, which would be ingested into WMO's databases, and everybody would be across the world would be operating under standard conditions. So once again, we are the authority for producing weather information for Trinidad and Tobago.
And on that note, we take a short break. You all heard it from Mr. Benjamin. I was speaking with Gary Benjamin, a meteorological officer, meteorologist at the Meteorological Office of Trinidad and Tobago. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are looking at an outlook of the wet/hurricane season. We're doing so with meteorologist Gary Benjamin. Now, Mr. Benjamin, temperature-wise, we're feeling it a little bit, but what kind of temperatures can we be looking forward to within the season, please?
Well, within our coming rainy season, we're looking at the average temperatures for this season, around 33 degrees Celsius. And I say around that, it could be 32, it could be 33, or it could be 34. In fact, we are looking at some above average temperatures. There's a 45% chance of the temperatures being above average for especially the western areas and the built up areas, the cities and the urban areas. They have the highest chance of being warmer than average. So we're looking at some maximum temperatures, and they are likely to reach and exceed 34 degrees Celsius. There's a high chance of hot days and heat surges to develop during August and September. And we also have elevated chances for hot spells of 34 degrees or more, and that hot spells or 5 or more consecutive days of 34 degrees Celsius or more. So the risk peaks in September and early October, and maximum temperatures can at times reach or exceed 35 degrees, as I said, especially in the cities and built up urban areas.
And I like the fact that, yes, there's information, but there's also that level of impact that is considered as well. And with that in mind, though, I want to ask about potential risk of flooding. And this is even switching a little bit from the temperature, but flood risk potential outlook during this season that is upon us.
Okay, the flood risk potential in general, it exists for all of our wet seasons. It is normal to just above normal for known flood areas, and also we having some emerging flood-prone areas. So we're looking at the flooding potential is near normal and across Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, when we say normal, any flood could cause devastating effects to the individuals involved in the flooding. But we're looking at the flood potential to be near normal. It may be just about higher in certain areas, but it is going to be near normal.
Now, you say emerging flood-prone areas, and my ears perk up a little bit. What are some of those factors that go into increasing the potential for flooding in some of these areas, Mr. Benjamin?
Well, when we look at the impacts of the flooding, the potential, the increased potential for flooding has to do sometimes with areas that getting more populations, human populations, more building up, which would be having a greater denudation of the land. You would be having more rooftops and faster runoff, less trees. So in areas where we may see growing developments, there could be emerging risks of flooding.
All right, and now we've said that this conversation is about the wet and the hurricane season outlook for 2023. We haven't necessarily spoken about hurricanes as yet, so let me ask you about the forecast for the area of interest to TNT, thank you, in terms of hurricane season.
Yes, this hurricane season, the area of interest, when we look at the 1991 to 2020 long-term climatological average, we see in our area of interest likely number of named storms to be 4, with a hurricane, 1 hurricane, and well, yes, 1 hurricane. But when we look at the figures this year, it is very much the same, most likely number of named storms 4, with a range of between 2 to 6, and the most likely number of hurricanes being 2, with a range of 1 to 3. So that means when we're looking at the development of hurricanes, we just have an average, or we're just looking at probably 1 more. And that is just looking forward and giving you an average of what is likely to happen. So that the season has a 44% chance of being normal. And when we look at above normal, there's a 34% chance of that, and below normal being a 22% chance. But I would like to state, obviously, that whether we have above normal or below normal hurricane or storms or named storms, we still looking that if even 1 hurricane, 1 storm, 1 cyclone is to affect us, it could be devastating for us. So whether the season turns out to be above normal or below normal, that we should be looking and be prepared anyhow for this season.
And that feels as though it translates to drunk or sober, mind your business. So I want to ask you about tips in just a bit, Mr. Benjamin. But when we say area of interest, what kind of geographical space does that cover?
The area of interest is just it starts from, if we go from west to east, it starts from just west of Trinidad and Tobago, and it goes all the way to the west coast of Africa. And the width of it starts from about, let's just say about 8 degrees north latitude to about 15 or 16 degrees north latitude. So that area going from just under Trinidad and Tobago to just about Guadeloupe or Martinique, or the central Leeward Islands, from just west of Trinidad and going all the way to the African west coast. Whenever we have found that whenever we see cyclones developing in that area, they pose a threat to Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore that is an area of interest to us for any type of development taking place.
Thank you so much. And you said if it's just below, if it's just above, we still need to have our ducks in a row. We need to be prepared. So what advice would you be giving at this time, Mr. Benjamin, to members of the public? Thank you.
Of course, I always believe in the buddy system, and I've seen it in Trinidad and Tobago over the years, notwithstanding all our frailties and different types of situations. Whenever we have any type of disaster situation like that, I am so proud to say that I see the population come out and help each other at times. So that is one of the systems, the buddy system. Before the season starts, get to understand your area. Of course, most people understand their area and the potential types of weather or negative effects from the weather that they may have. Begin to prepare from now. Pack your grab-and-go bags. Put your medicines and your important documents in waterproof containers or bags or whatever have you. Have a grab-and-go bag. Ensure that your batteries and your lights are up to mark. Ensure that you have power in all your cell phones and all those chargeable types of equipment. Put away a little storage of canned foods in case of emergencies, and water also, so that you may be able to help yourself to at least survive in a few days, so that in case the first responders take some time before they reach you. Like I always say, while we have organized first responders, in any disaster, it is you or your neighbors around that who are the actual ground zero responders, immediate responders. So while we may have first responders, you, the people within the disaster, if you can, are the people, the immediate responders who can help yourself and help others. And the way to do that is to be very prepared before the season starts, know the disaster management unit numbers, and so who you can call on for assistance, but also know your neighborhood. Look to people who might not be as able as you and understand where they live, and in case they need help, you could pinpoint them and get to them in case of emergencies.
And with that, we want to thank you for your commitment to keeping us in the know, Mr. Benjamin, and also reminding individuals that they can check for full rainfall and temperature outlook, as well as El Nino information available at www.metoffice.gov.tt, and to check out the social media platforms at TT Met Service or TT Met Office. Just spoke with Gary Benjamin, meteorologist, and we want to thank you on behalf of the entire TTT News team. This has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.